Hello everyone, this is a review of our chapter in our text on phenomenology. To talk about phenomenology, we have to first define the meaning of the word phenomenon. It is something that has the potential to be explained, quite simply. If we look at the philosophical roots of the term, as it was used by Immanuel Kant, it contrasts with noumenon, or something that can't be explained, or doesn't have the potential to be explained. Like what happens after life, or what is outside of the universe, for example. To contrast phenomenology with our earlier review of dramaturgy, which focuses on how people do everyday life, phenomenology examines the why. We look at how we analyze the taken for granted everyday world, the basis of human conduct. Related to this is another big word with a straightforward meaning: ethnomethodology. This line asks, what are the methods people use? And by methods, we are not talking about research methods, but how we navigate our everyday life smoothly. What are the methods that you use? For example, think about going to the grocery store. You have a method. You might make a list, or you might just have the list in your mind. As you move through the grocery store, from section to section, you do so with some intent. That said, we all have a method for doing something in our everyday life, going to the grocery store and going shopping. So Alfred Schutz was the author of most of the ideas that we review here. Here is the assumption that there is not an objective or subjective reality. All consciousness has to have a subject, the person doing the knowing and interpreting of a particular situation. They call it an object in your textbook. The object is the situation being known. So there's a knower and a knowing, a known. For every person, this is their everyday, lived-in, real world. What existing assumptions are made meaningful in consciousness? The term for this is life world. We bracket, another term from the text, our knowing of our world by referencing these relations which are meaningful to us. We share a world of meaning with other people. This is termed intersubjectivity. You know that I know that you know. To get our minds around this, think of a physical dollar bill. Let me see if I have one in my wallet. Here we go. Oh, it's got some stuff written on it. I didn't see that. Okay. Well, anyway, here's a physical dollar bill. It has no meaning that's subjective. That is, that comes from nothing other than your consciousness. You cannot will a dollar bill to buy you a steak, for example, or for this dollar bill to be worth something more than it is. It's also not objective, in that if you have $1,000,001 bills on a desert island and nothing else, they wouldn't do you much good. But because you know that I know and everyone else knows that this dollar bill has a basic meaning that's agreed upon, these little pieces of paper are really valuable. Our collective intersubjective understanding of what this paper means to you, me, and everyone else in the United States means that I can order off the dollar value meal at McDonald's. We share, in effect, the same dollar bill consciousness. This is what is termed a stock of knowledge about what paper money stands for. It's assumed knowledge, and we don't have to think about it as much. There have been situations in Central Africa and post-World War I Germany, though, where we had a breakdown of the agreed upon meaning of what the value of a piece of paper meant, and we had For example, hyperinflation, where they started printing $10 trillion or 10 trillion mark, or it was pounds in this Central African, it was Zambia, 10 million pound notes. I mean, ridiculous, because the money had been, the agreed upon system broke down. So that's another thing we can look at when that happens. But for us, the money's relatively stable, and we have a dollar bill consciousness that's sort of a stable pattern in our lives. Next, we come to the concepts of Peter Berger and Thomas Luckmann. The big takeaway from these theorists who extend the concept of Schutz is that the world is socially constructed. Even object physical reality requires of us a social interpretation. Your stomach aches. That's real. Gastric juices are flowing. But how much does it ache? How much emphasis do you put on that? Even these sorts of realities offer a social interpretation. We come then to this concept of reification. That's an important word. I'm going to further break this down because the text, while generally excellent, stops short of giving you a concrete example of what reification means. And it's a very relevant concept, both in communication studies and sociology, social psychology, literary analysis. It's a very, very important concept. Reification is, quite simply, the treatment of an abstract concept as if it were a thing, a real thing. Take the word freedom. I love freedom, don't you? We hear this word all the time. But what the heck does it mean? Is it the freedom to choose from 50 cereals in the breakfast aisle at the Publix? Is it the freedom to have an abortion, or the freedom for a fetus to be carried to term no matter what? The freedom from the threat of enslavement, or the freedom to own slaves? The list goes on and on. By not specifying the terms of the abstract concept, by specifying what we mean by freedom, we run the risk of its becoming meaningless. This meaninglessness is the basis for the next video on post-structuralism. Finally, Dorothy Smith took these concepts and made a series of important insights. First, this everyday world is taken for granted exists in a reciprocal relationship or recursive relationship with a greater social structure, what Marx called the base and superstructures, economic arrangements, legal, medical, education, family, and media, institutional spheres, provide us with the material we need to form the terms of our everyday lives, our life world. But the problem is that it is much different for women than it is for men. For women, as Dorothy Smith points out, the everyday world is problematic. That is, the terms through which women negotiate their everyday lives are often contingent and subject to terms and conditions that are imposed on them from outside, rather than women themselves having any power. While constraints, a key concept of Berger and Luckmann, are there for everyone, women, as opposed to men, have a set of constraints that are much more comprehensive than those for men, generating gender inequality both at the everyday intersubjective level and institutionally throughout society.